So our topic this evening is an interesting one, and we're going to be looking at the intersection or the overlap of therapy and inquiry. And in particular, we will look at how therapy may be useful for somebody who's engaging in inquiry, and find out what are the things we need to look out for as we engage these different modalities. So many people think that because inquiry, we're exploring our inner world, we encounter a lot of our psychological material. So the territory, if you like, is in some ways overlaps with the territory of different therapies. So we want to look a little more into what are the implications of that. And how do we navigate that, and how can we usefully use therapy? Is it something that we might need, that might be useful as we engage on our journey with inquiry? So we're going to begin, as we usually do, with a short practice. So I'm going to invite you to find a good sitting position for yourself. You don't have to sit in any particular special position, but in a way that you will be comfortable. And we begin remembering, as we do, our friendly interest. Right? So this is like one of the defining things of inquiry. You're going to go exploring your inner world, getting in touch with yourself, with your experience, and with what's true for you. And we want to try and do that with an attitude of friendly, curious, open interest. So let your eyes close. And we'll start off exploring some of the immediate physical sensations of our bodies. So bring your attention down to your right foot. And take some time to sense into the immediate sensations of your right foot. See what you notice there. Might be the weight of your foot on the ground, contact between your foot and your shoe or your sock. Maybe the temperature of your foot. Sense the toes, the heel, the sole of your foot. So there's nothing you're particularly meant to find here. You're just letting yourself get more in touch, more directly and immediately in touch with your right foot, with the experience of your right foot. And then sensing your right ankle. What's that like? As you place your attention in your right ankle, what can you experience there? Does it have a shape or a texture? And then sense up your right lower leg. Maybe you can sense the shin, the calf, the length of your right lower leg. The air around your leg, or the feeling of your clothing against it. Maybe the skin or the muscle or the bone. Whatever you can get in touch with. Deeply entering your right lower leg. And then your right knee. Kneecap, the soft bit at the back. Feel free to bring a little movement into your leg, to sense your knee. And then let the sensing move up into your right upper leg, your thigh. Inner thigh, your outer thigh. Hamstring underneath your leg, perhaps coming into contact with the chair. the muscles on the top of your leg, your quads. And sense all the way up into your hip joint. And feel your bum, your right bum on the chair. The breadth of it, perhaps it feels fleshy, perhaps it feels solid. Perhaps it feels like a solid kind of support, or maybe it doesn't. So you're letting yourself connect with whatever you're experiencing there. And then sense the whole of your right leg, from the toes all the way up to the hip. Now shift your attention to your right fingers. Each finger, see if you can sense each finger, knuckles, palm of the hand. Sense the shape of your hand, the shape of your right hand. And sense into your right wrist. What's happening there? So there's no right or wrong. Just an invitation to get close to, not to think about the sensations of your body, but to really sense them. Sensing your right forearm up to your right elbow. Maybe aches or pains, tightness. Maybe it feels fleshy or muscular. Just notice. And your right upper arm. It's like your sensing is filling up the right upper arm, as if every cell, every molecule of your right upper arm is coming alive, alive with whatever the sensation is. Sensation may be like, maybe it feels dead, maybe it feels empty, maybe it hardly feels like it's there. But now you're in touch with it, in touch with that. Just letting that be how it is. And sensing your right shoulder. Whole of that shoulder joint, shoulder girdle on the right side. Now sense the whole of your right arm, from the fingers to the shoulder. Maybe you've noticed the kind of physical elements of it. See if there's something more qualitative you notice, like does it feel fluid or solid or dense or flimsy, brittle? So you may begin to notice sensations that are not just physical. Maybe you can feel energy flowing or some kind of presence. Something substantial and there. And then sense across your neck to your left shoulder, and we'll go down the left side. So sensing the left shoulder, the front, the back, the side of the shoulder. How's your left shoulder this evening or this morning? Is it feeling tight or relaxed? Does it feel like it's carrying the world, or joyfully open? And sense down your left arm into the left upper arm. I feel the very sensing itself, like some kind of consciousness, some medium filling up your left arm. Maybe overflowing your left arm. And sensing down the left elbow and left forearm. Just being curious, like it's like you're running your fingers, your inner touch, long and within your left arm, and deeply sensing whatever is there, inhabiting it. Your left wrist and the palm and fingers of your left hand. Can you sense the fingernails? Fingertips. Again, maybe there's something qualitative to the experience in your fingertips. Like, do they feel bright, or they feel precise, or they feel open, sensitive? And then bringing your attention into your left hip. Left hip, the left buttock, left side of the pelvis. Feel the weight of your torso coming through that support. And then sense down into the left thigh. Feel the whole girth, length of that thigh. And the left knee. And down the left shin and calf, lower leg. All the way to the left ankle, and then the heel and arch, and the ball and toes of the left foot. What's it like to really inhabit that? To be open to whatever you find there. If you let go of every idea you have about what a left foot even feels like, and see what actually does it feel like right now. It may be unlike anything you've ever experienced before. And then sense the whole of your left leg and the whole of your left arm. And sense both arms and both legs. Sensing your arms and legs. Notice how it's affecting you to do this. Like what happens as you're this fully in touch with your arms and legs? Even if what you're in touch with is the experience that, oh, I can't sense anything there. You don't seem to have any feet below the knees. They're just gone. That's kind of interesting, right? It's an interesting experience. So you're sensing your arms and legs. Now add listening, bringing in sensing the sounds. sounds in your environment, sounds of your body, your breathing. Maybe the sounds inside you, sounds of your consciousness. Maybe you can hear the silence. Consciously listening. Sensing and listening. And then when you're ready to, let your eyes begin to gently open and begin consciously looking. Colors, shapes, and textures. Your conscious experience of your environment. So you're sensing, looking, and listening. Sensing, looking, listening. Now add a few more layers. These interesting layers of your inner world. Notice how you're feeling. What kind of feelings are present? Kind of emotional, affective. Are you feeling bored or irritated or curious or joyful or peaceful, kind or gentle? Just see what kind of feelings are here. Notice how your mind is, like what's on your mind. Is your mind quiet? Is there a sort of a stream of chatter going on? You're thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? Right? So just noticing it, right? Whatever it is, it's fine. Being aware of it. Thoughts, feelings, sensations. And then one more step, you ask that question, so what's up for me? What's going on for me right now? If you're just being honest, like where are you? Like if you were sitting down with your best friend or just talking about what's true for you, what's important for you. Maybe something from your life is up. Maybe it's that feeling that you're having right now that's kind of the main thing. Or that funny sensation in your belly that you're curious about. So you just notice like something on your mind. There's something that voice is chattering about. That seems important. Like what's it really saying? So there's just an open, kind of friendly curiosity to what is arising in your experience, what is personally true for you. Like what's really up for you? And that kind of brings in a little of the orientation of inquiry. So as you know, then we would go and spend some time talking about that and exploring it, and finding out what it is, what's making it happen, how come it's there, where is it coming from, right? It might be related to something going on out there in our life, so we can see that. We still wonder, well, okay, so that's what's happening out there. Well, what's making it happen in me? How come what am I worried about? Or what am I thinking about? Or what is this love that's beginning to arise in my heart? Or this feeling of intimacy as I get a little closer to myself? So you're just exploring the truth, just exploring your personal, immediate experience to see what can you tell about it? What is it? What's happening? What's making it happen? And what happens as you get in touch with it and you discover and recognize more about it? So as many of you will know, that then becomes a whole dynamic unfolding process of discovery, revelation, expansion, and exploration. And as we begin exploring our inner world, in time, especially with with inquiry and with the way that we're learned to inquire here, where we include such a broad range of our experience, right? So we inquire into our experience, and that means everything. It means everything that can be happening in your life and how it is arising and what it is bringing about in your consciousness, in your experience. That's what we mean by experience, right? Your immediate palpable experience, the sensations, the feelings, the thoughts, the meanings and drives and motivations and impulses, all of that immediate experience. That's what we explore with inquiry in a completely open-ended way. We're not trying to get anywhere. We're not trying to make any particular thing happen. We just want to find out where we are, what's going on for us, what's here, what's true, what's real. Yeah. And as we do that, that kind of takes us little by little deeper and deeper into our inner world, because we're exploring it in such a direct and immediate way. Right, our feelings. You say, well, I get in touch with these feelings, and then as I'm exploring, well, how come I had such a reaction to what this person said? And then at some point you realize, oh my God, I feel like a little kid, right? I've stumbled into some little young part of myself, right? Not as an association or an idea, but in the direct, immediate experience. Oh, I'm in touch with this little kid who's been feels so hurt for some reason, lonely and afraid, whatever it might be. Yeah. And then we see, oh, that's what's making me have that reaction. It's connecting with this young part of me, right? So we connect in our inquiry and time. It will bring us into that psychological dimension, right? And that's where a lot of people say, well, it's a lot like therapy, right? Sounds like therapy to me, right? We're getting in touch with seeing our past and how it's involved, right? And it's true, it overlaps. There is an overlap of territory in that sense. And with our inquiry, we keep exploring. Well, what about this little kid? Well, they feel so shut down because there was no love for them. It feels like no love, all alone. Oh, and as we feel that, suddenly you begin to notice, because you're also sensing your body, sensing your experience, begin to notice the sweet, gentle love begins arising in your heart. Oh, I see that little child and that heartbreak, and oh, my heart opens, and there's just sweet, delicate, soft, tender pink molecules of softness bubbling out of my chest. And somebody goes, what? Okay, that didn't sound like therapy. What happened there? We kind of went off the map a bit. Right? Yeah, so you feel the love. How do you experience the love? Well, it's kind of soft and fluffy and gentle and kind of this weird pink texture in my heart. What happens as you get in touch with it? I get actually really quite concerned. Guys are not supposed to feel all soft and sweet. I have some kind of issue with this. I don't think that's a good thing at all. Okay, so then that becomes the exploration. We start looking into this. Where did you get that idea? What makes me think that? Right? So there's an unfolding and a discovery, and what we find in time is this kind of flow between our history, what's happening now in our lives, and then these inner qualities of our nature that we can begin to recognize through inquiry, through the way that we sense our experience. Now, as we do all of that, that will, little by little, open up and expand our reach into our inner world. And in time, and sometimes over very, very long periods of time, long stretches of time, that will bring you into everything, right? It'll bring you into all the stuff, all the hurts and the wounds and the history, right? In time, it's all going to come up to be examined. And it's examined and explored not because we go looking for it or we go out to try and find it, but because as we're getting in touch with the truth, we begin to see these things as barriers that start popping up. You're like, well, I feel all big and expansive. And then I remember like, oh, I always used to get into trouble when that happened. I'd always get yelled at. And so whenever that expansiveness starts coming out, I get scared. So the psychological, the history comes in, but it's coming in and we're exploring it because we're seeing how, as we just explore what's true for us, it becomes a barrier to just allowing the truth. In this case, the truth of our strength and fieriness. So it's good to know, it's sort of one of the key insights of the diamond approach is that what we could call spiritual work, the work and the discovery of our nature, of what we are fundamentally, what we experience ourselves to be experientially as human beings, that recognizing that, discovering that, and expanding that is inseparable from the kind of psychological work. The two are, they keep running into each other. You can't expand your awareness without dealing with the issues that you have about awareness, right? And those issues come from your childhood. So what this means is that in time, as you inquire, it's quite possible that you'll run into like difficult stuff, right? Feelings of deficiency we know are going to happen, right? The little chasms at the bottom of the seabed as we go diving in. But also if there's traumatic history, traumatic events that happened, in time, these will tend to start surfacing. And we expand our scope in our inquiry for the things that we can allow ourselves to feel. So we allow ourselves to feel, at the beginning, maybe you can have a little bit of anger and a little bit of sadness, right? But you can inquire for a couple of years, you go diving deeper and deeper, and you start finding, no, there's like a really deep rage here, right? Or a really deep wound, or we get into some kind of intensity that might feel more challenging. In the journey of inquiry, it happens so kind of gradually that generally, organically, we kind of build our capacity. As we get deeper into the ocean, we build our capacity to be with the creatures of the deep, right? Deeper into the ocean of our inner world. So little by little, we build the capacity like, oh yeah, I can be with this now. I can tolerate this. I can explore this to find out what's true about it. And in time, we can befriend our inner great white sharks and the inner giant squids and all the other creatures of the deep. We can really get to know them and discover their secrets. And at times that may start to feel for some people, many people at different times, it becomes challenging, right? And we can come across experience, especially a kind of traumatic kind of experience that needs more holding than we can necessarily just get, inquiring by ourselves or hanging out with our inquiry buddy and doing an inquiry together. Or sometimes even, having a teacher. We might have an inquiry teacher, maybe they can only see us, once a month or every so often. It doesn't feel like enough to deal with something if there is difficult or traumatic experience that's emerging. We may also start to find like difficulties in things like relationships, like as we get more into the inner world, like it might start affecting our relationships. And we get all sensitive, we need some help to kind of manage and navigate that. We might find that there's somatic kind of experience that begins emerging that is, feels like it needs a lot of time and a lot of work to really open up and to be allowed and discovered. And so all of these basically become opportunities where some kind of therapy could be really helpful, right? Could be really supportive, right? In a sense, there are so many different kinds of therapies. And really, each one of them gives a particular kind of, holding or support or capacity development, right? To be able to tolerate, manage, open up to, hold, be with different kinds of experience. And if our inquiry journey has opened something up that seems like it needs a little more help to be with and to kind of build the capacity for, something like that can be really, really useful. Yeah? So I really want to say that there is there's no harm in it. Like there is certainly no shame. I mean, it's just these things can be very useful in helping us navigate certain parts of our inner world. So there are kinds of therapies that will help you, just give you like a lot of time and a lot of physical holding to be with something as it's surfacing, right? That, you know, kind of by yourself or with a session once every 2 weeks or whatever, just not enough. Just not enough. And if that's the case, it's good to, you know, be willing to kind of go for that. I look back on my own journey, and there are definitely moments I can think of, kind of sort of at a particular time, but kind of, you know, around 10 years odd into the work, I think it would have been super useful, like for myself. There were, at that time I didn't. And when I reflect back on it now, I think, yeah, that would just have been like really useful, right? Useful to kind of help be with some of what was coming up. And, you know, of whatever kind it is. Different kinds of therapies each address different things. So the thing in looking at therapies, I think so the first thing I want to say to you is don't be shy if you think it's needed, if it would be helpful. Like really don't be shy. Like it's not like I see people get stuck into things like, no, I've just got to inquire into this. You know, honestly, inquiry is not always the most effective therapy. It's not meant to be therapy. And it is not, if what you need is a specific kind of therapy, it's not the best way of doing it. You know, it's kind of like people playing squash, like they play squash to get fit, right? But, you know, playing squash is a whole skill, right? It's a skill and it's a game and it's a whole complicated thing. Right. And maybe in order to do squash, you actually need to go to the gym and do some specific exercises, right? Or to get strong in particular ways, or to go and work on a particular injury that's there, right? And you need to go and have 20 sessions with a physical therapist to go and strengthen up your leg or work on your mobility, right? And just doing squash is not really going to do that for you, right? Not in a great way. But you might just end up injuring yourself even more. Yeah. So what I think is, so the first thing is don't be shy to go for it, right? If it feels like something would be useful and you have the means and you can, why not? And here's the second part. The second part is to be clear on what it is, right? And to be clear that therapy can be therapy and inquiry can be inquiry. So this is the second piece of it. Because the other thing that people do is they engage in some kind of therapy and they try to use it as just more inquiry, right? Or they bring their therapeutic approach to inquiry and they try to use inquiry as sort of therapy plus. And I don't think either of those is actually very useful. I think it's far more useful if we can let therapy be therapy and inquiry be inquiry, right? It's just like meditation. It's like meditation and inquiry, right? I always say to people, when you meditate, meditate, right? That's what you're doing there. You're practicing your concentration if you're doing the concentration practice. When meditating, meditate. Don't sit there inquiring, right? Because it's a different thing. And you need to be kind of crisp about that. And then when you inquire, inquire. You're not going to just sit while you're inquiring and just meditate, right? Different thing. So similarly with therapy, as you engage into a therapy, it will have its own particular logic, its own particular way of approaching the territory that it kind of works with, right? It will have its own particular methodology and way of thinking about things. And, you know, in a certain way, like, let it be that. That's what it is. That's what it does. Take it on its terms and explore it in that way. If you're a dedicated inquirer, you know, you'll probably be having some kind of inquiry, broader inquiry going on. But, you know, let it be what it is and engage it so that you can get the benefits that it has to offer. And then when you inquire, you have the freedom of inquiry. Inquiry is not focused on problems. Inquiry is not, you know, it includes your somatic experiencing. Well, that's a kind of therapy, isn't it? But inquiry includes our phenomenological experience in a way that no therapy does, right? I don't know any therapy that includes like sensing your experience finely enough to be able to sense the joy, the love, the clarity, the empty spaciousness, sensing your experience finely enough, understanding it precisely enough that it begins to become diamonds, like that's actually a thing that can happen, right? That your felt sense of your consciousness can become so sharp and precise that your love, for example, becomes like sharp, clear, precise love, diamond love, right? These things are like off the charts for most therapies. It's just not something they even entertain. Even the therapies that have very strong bodily and somatic orientation still mostly conceive of the experience of the body just in terms of bodily sort of, you know, arms, muscles, legs. I mean, you know, kind of obviously physiological sensations. They don't necessarily conceive of it in terms of consciousness, presence, right? So these are not bad things. There's nothing about good or bad here. It's just letting each thing be what it is. And then I think our different therapies can be enormously valuable to help us on our journey. You know, you're inquiring, you hit something that has a certain kind of difficulty. If you need to, you can get some help with that. Right? There's really only upside in that. And, you know, it may be that for a while, the two may sit uneasily next to each other. I had an experience like this. So for a while, I started training very early on in my inquiry and diamond approach journey. I started training in a kind of body work, right? It's a great kind of body work, really amazing body work. And it includes all the emotional stuff. And it was a wonderful process to engage with. But at some point, I started to recognize that with the people I was working with in that body work, when they would hit a tension, they were interested in releasing it. Like the whole thing was, okay, find the tension in the body and release it. And at that point, at some point, I started to realize I was more interested in, I wanted to just explore it. Like, what is that tension? How come that tension is there? What if we just let it be there and find out about it rather than just being occupied with getting rid of it? And that started to show me that at that time, I was trying to use the therapy as inquiry, whereas actually that just wasn't primarily what it was. So it's good to recognize what it is your soul is actually looking for, what you're wanting. Sometimes when we're dealing with like really difficult stuff, we just want somebody to be there and kind of, you know, hold our hand either literally or at least metaphorically and just be with us in the difficulty. You know, sometimes that really is the kind of support that we need. Sometimes we need somebody to really just do a lot of body work, like a lot of holding and kind of gentle things. And then we can inquire, right? Separately, we can continue the inquiry, continue the exploration, continue just that interested, curious, fascinated exploration of our inner world, wherever it takes us. And one more example, thinking of more things like CBT type therapies, right? I used to think, oh, those kind of things are, how can that be useful? Because, you know, we want to dive in inquiry, we want to dive right into it and feel into it. Whereas sometimes those kind of therapies, it's like, no, you notice you're having a trigger, an emotional trigger, you just notice it and you figure out what you need to do to change in your environment, or to kind of not go down that path, or to learn to manage that feeling so that you're not overwhelmed by it. These days, I think, you know, sometimes that's really useful. If there's like really strong stuff emerging in us, maybe we need to do that for a while to kind of gain the capacity to go, okay, I'm getting triggered. I'm going to park that for a minute, step away, be able to not get lost in it. And those kind of therapies can be very useful for that. And of course, at some point in our inquiry, we'll go there. We will go into it because it will take us into it. Right? And then we can just get open and interested into the experience to find out what that is. Because in time, our inquiry will need to take us there, right? It will. Yeah. Because that'll just be how your experience unfolds. So I think that's kind of mostly what I wanted to say today. Those two takeaways. Don't be shy about it. And let it be what it is, right? Like, let it be a support, useful support, a great resource that can help you then continue and deepen your inquiry and your inner exploration. So I think we're going to do a little exercise now. And you're just going to get into groups of 3. And I want you to just sort of explore, you know, what ideas or experience, just reflect on what experience you have with this if you do. So if you've done therapy and you've done inquiry, how do you see them kind of fitting together? You know, what ideas or beliefs do you have about that? You just want to see what's your sense of that, right? If you haven't, what are your, if you do inquiry, but you haven't done any kind of therapy, like, just consider, like, what's your attitude or your ideas about it? Is it something that you imagine you would, you know, you could go for if you were experiencing something difficult or not, right? If it was more than you seem to be able to hold, you know, would you look for assistance or wouldn't you? And what can you see about that? And if you haven't done either inquiry or therapy, if you're like totally new, then just think about, how do you feel about getting help generally, right? So if you're engaging in something and you get to a point where you feel you actually need some kind of help to continue, like, how are you with that? Do you go for help? Do you look for help? Or do you just try to do it all yourself? What's your take on that? So really, we're looking at a little bit into your attitudes around getting help. And that could be in the specific context of therapy and inquiry, or if you don't have that as something in your experience, you can look at it in a general way. All right. So you'll find yourself in a group of 3. It's nice. So you'll hear sort of hopefully 2 other people's perspectives as well. So you each have 5 minutes. Remember, when you do the way we do these kind of monologues, that either you let the person who's going will talk for 5 minutes. Your monologue is completely just for you. It's your own personal exploration of, you know, what do you see about this question? Right? It's not for the benefit of the viewers. It's not to be clever or to show anything off, or, you know, it's just for you, just your own curiosity to see what you find. And the witnesses, the other 2 people, you want to be silent, neutral witnesses. No interrupting, no therapizing, no advising, no therapeutic humming, no psychic readings. You just want to be silent, sense your arms and legs, be present, and let the other person have the gift of going wherever they go. Yeah, 5 minutes each. The whole thing will take 15 minutes. And then we'll come right back here for a little group discussion and sharing. See you in a bit. Okay, so welcome back. And we have some time now. Time for questions or comments or sharing. Well, what are you finding about this topic, or what questions do you have? Love to hear them. Beth, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that when I got involved in the diamond heart work, I had to fill out a very lengthy application. And they want to know all about my history, my childhood and my adult life. And the response was that I was accepted conditionally, and I needed to have 3 to 5 sessions with the teacher. And I had a couple of reactions. One was like, and then I was defensive of it, and then I was like very impressed, right? Because I wanted to really say this so the group could hear it. They wanted to be sure that I could handle the depth of what would occur in inquiry. And after I had like 2 sessions, my teacher said, I was good to go. And I have done a massive amount of therapy. I would not be able to do this work without the massive amount of work I had already done. So it's imperative, I feel, especially as you say, if people have had a very difficult childhood, which I had. And so it's like you said, no shame, more appreciation for that holding environment, because to do this level of work really requires, I think, an incredible amount of courage and depth. And that holding environment needs to be one where I have the strong enough ego to begin.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Beth. I'm glad you had that experience. And I also want to differentiate here between, people who are in the diamond approach, which is, that's the whole thing, and people who are just learning a bit about inquiry, right? Because there are people who are, will be learning about inquiry who are either not yet in the school or, may not join the school, that just want to do a bit of inquiry. And I think it's very good to know that. Obviously, if you have the teaching of the diamond approach as well, that's going to take you like so much deeper, right? Because we kind of zoom in on particular areas. We go straight all the way into it, right? Whereas if somebody is just exploring by themselves, they can do that. That's fine. There can be a certain amount of discovering and unfolding and all that can happen. But I think it's very true that as long as we know that if things start to get out of hand, that, we're not shy to seek the kind of support that we might need. Yeah, great. Thank you. Great point. Yeah. Yes. So next we have Alice. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Dom. So, my question is, and I guess this would be my preference also, what I'm hoping for is that one could do sort of a spiritual bypass around the issues. I guess more specifically, couldn't the experience, the repetitive experience of presence and true nature be enough of a corrective experience so that you could kind of skip over the issues related to childhood and just not really,
Well, the difficulty is that as you're inquiring, so focusing on inquiry, just from the perspective of inquiry, as you're inquiring, when you get in touch with your experience, what's going to happen at some point? You're going to get in touch with that young part, right? That'll happen. Like, oh, it's just here. So then the question is, what you're going to do, right? Are you going to go, okay, I'm now in touch with something like that. I need to, go and to try and summon up some compassion, or summon up some kind of quality, or do some kind of technique to shift my experience away from that. And that then is just, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's not inquiry, right? At that point, the inquiry is stopped, right? Because the inquiry, if you're just inquiring, you'll be like, oh, there's some young part of me here. Like, let me get close to that part. Let me find out about it. And it's even more complicated than that, this being the kind of central insight of the diamond approach, that actually it is as you see that part, right, and are with it and begin to open up what is sort of wrapped in that little wrapper, that those spiritual qualities come out, because they are what is wrapped up in that little wrapper. And the only way to really get to them, in a certain sense, in an ongoing way, is to open up the wrapper, which means dealing with the experience as it comes into your consciousness. Now, you don't have to do that. That's just how inquiry works. Other people will say, skip all of that and just go and meditate on compassion. And in time, that will have an effect on you. And that's true. And that's a valid, go for it, spiritual approach, but it's not inquiry. The inquiry will, in a sense, take you to these places. It will take you to the conditioning and the history. It will take you to the holes and the disconnections from being. And then if you can follow it all the way through, it will take you through that to the being itself. And then you won't need to do a wiggle, right, to kind of get away from anything, because it will be genuinely digested. But the truth is, that is a very long, that's a long process. And it's not even primarily what we're aiming for. It sort of happens as a byproduct.
Okay.
Yeah, so how is that? That may not be the answer.
I totally understand what you're saying. And I've had that experience. I guess more specifically, I've started doing the course on the instincts. And in the second module, Hamid is talking about, I may have misunderstood this, development of the social, healthy social interactions, and the capacity for that is sort of like a requirement for the enlightenment instinct to develop. And so my sense is, I never really developed that, but I sort of developed my own strategies of being. So that's the question. Can I just sort of stick with my own?
There was a drive behind that, right? There was a drive that enabled you to develop your own strategies.
Yeah. Right.
What was that drive?
Just feeling like, or believing that I couldn't really count on anyone in my world. So I learned to count on myself. Right. And so in something, so I became very independent. I am very independent, but also I have a way of going inward and self-soothing, which sort of brings me to a place of presence within me and peace within me.
Right. Beautiful. So there was a drive that kind of started off, maybe initially that's how you had to survive, right? You couldn't depend on them out there. You had to do it for yourself. So there was your survival drive, right? So there's an instinct at play there, right? There's going to be an instinct at play. And it sounds like it has led you to connect more deeply with yourself and to discover deeper truths. So for you, maybe the primary instinct wasn't the social one, but there are others still coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Alice. Thanks for the question. And yes, Che.
Hi.
Hi, Jay.
So using your metaphor about the wrapper, I'm understanding that it seems like it can be a portal into the essential qualities, and at the same time, it can be a barrier. And I guess for me, regarding this what we did in the inquiry, it feels like, do I need to see somebody outside of just inquiry if the barrier becomes too much? Maybe it's too much of a barrier. It's kind of difficult for me to know, to self-diagnose whether is it a barrier that can kind of be digested, or is it a barrier that's just like, I got to go see someone?
Very good question. So this is the second dive in with Dom we've done on this topic. So the first one is partly why I wanted to do this one, because in the first one we spoke more about that, right? So how to tell if it's too much, right? And the kind of two basic things that I sort of mentioned, you can go and listen to the episode on YouTube. But the one is, can you sense your arms and legs? Can you be present with the experience? So that's the first thing. And two, can you continue to be functional in your life, right? So can you carry on with your job and your relationships and, all the things that you do? If your inner process is kind of breaking down to an extent that you cannot be, you can't carry on doing that. You feel like you can't carry on your work, or you can't carry on relationships or something like that. Then, by then you're in a situation where you need some help, right? So that's one way to tell. And if you find that the experience is like so intense, right, that you can't really be present with it, you can't sense your arms and legs, you can't practice with it, right? So inquiry is a practice. To be able to inquire, we've got to be able to be with it, to allow it, and then to explore it. If we're just completely overwhelmed by it, right, then we can't really inquire. It's like the difference between being able to go swimming in the ocean, even if the currents are strong, and just being sucked in and tumbled about and, totally out of control. So there are moments in inquiry that really can feel like you're getting sucked in and tumbled out and out of control. But, they're moments. They might last a few minutes. They might last a day, maybe, a couple of days. But at some point, you want to check, okay, I can function. I can keep living my life. And if not, that's definitely a good indicator. Like, okay, I may be out of my depth here. Maybe I need to get some help.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that really clarifies it for me. What I'm noticing, I'm in Diamond Heart 9, and we have our small groups. I mean, it can get pretty, the rapids can get pretty frothy at times. Yeah. And I feel sometimes what influences that is sometimes it's just having people around me, just the stage fright of just, I feel like that is a technical thing. I mean, it activates what I'm kind of going through even more because there's 9 other people.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. That's part of the gift of it. So it can get frothy, right? The work gets frothy, right? I like how you put that. Our inquiry can get very turbulent sometimes. And we really do encounter the sharks and the kind of the beasts that come up from the deep and the caverns and the chasms, and, the whole works. It can all come up. But the question is, if you look at it over a reasonable span of time, can you be with it, right? Have you got the capacity to stay present and continue practicing? That's the question. And if you have, then great. Like, these are the adventures. This is the adventure, right? And yeah, sometimes it's scary and sometimes it's discombobulating, but that kind of opens up to all sorts of wonders. So
this was really helpful because I think I had a real inner critic saying, oh my God, you got to go see a specialist. And this is, and I realized I was criticizing myself because the way that you explained it, I'm like, oh, well, I am functional. I can sense my arms and legs. I can stay with it. And I think one of the bias that I had about seeing a therapist too much is that I feel like they were going to indulge me too much in my story. You know, give me feedbacks of like wanting to just kind of improve or self-improve or something like that. And so I think I was afraid that they would just indulge me too much. But yeah. But thank you so much. This was really, really helpful at this juncture of Diamond Heart for me.
Great, you're welcome. Glad it was useful. And Jax, go ahead.
Hey, Dom.
Hi.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and maybe what I really just want to do is like reflect on something. So I do a lot of inquiry. You know, I've got a kind of daily, if not daily, inquiry buddy. I've got my private sessions with you. I've got my home group. I've got my dive group, you know, all of that. But I landed up just booking sessions with a psychologist in the town that I live in, and he really doesn't satisfy me at all in terms of his approach. But the thing that perhaps draws me there is because I just felt like I needed someone living in this very small, conservative, rural, isolated town that I live in. I needed someone where I could like have permission to just be totally honest. And I just couldn't find that any other place. So it's almost like it's met a social need.
Right. I was just going to say that. So that's great to see that you're using it for a particular thing and you're clear about what you're using it for. Right. And I think that's great. You know, then it's that in itself can become something you inquire into, like, well, what need is this kind of fulfilling? And you can see how it is to have it fulfilled and, you know, all the rest of it. I think as long as we're sort of consciously using it in some way, like some people I know go and sign up with a therapist, and because they say they can't afford more sessions, or maybe their health insurance will pay for therapy sessions, so they think, well, I'm going to go and do this and it'll be instead of getting more inquiry sessions. And you know, sometimes, yeah, as you say, that can be very unsatisfying because the therapist does not necessarily have the perspective, well, almost certainly won't have the perspective of the Diamond approach. So yeah, that's a case of using it for something that it's not really going to be satisfying for. And, you know, I mean, I can think of one time where I took advantage of a therapist more or less for that reason. I was going through something very difficult, and it was really good just to have somebody to go and sit there and help them hold it. And I inquired, and probably half the time they weren't really sure what I was talking about, but, you know, it was useful. I could let it be sort of what it was and use it for what it could give me. Yeah, that sounds really good though.
It's just an interesting thing that there's a need for like a real in-person contact.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes just that, there's something about just that, right? That really is, you know, it is a thing. Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Jax. Sue.
Oh, let me just pin you. Yeah, I've got to say something about this. I've had a lot of therapy in my life, and I think it helped me the least of everything. And I think when I reflect back on it, like I went to a therapist for 3 years, twice a week. And I think all it really did was medicate, you know, just kind of regulate. I was in a stressful job, and so not similar, but like the other person was sharing about being heard, just having a space to go to offload, And so I really feel it was a lot of money and time, but it didn't really transform anything. And yeah, and I think that, and then I had a recent experience where I was in shock, basically shock over something that happened. And somebody told me that I thought I'm in a shock layer of my childhood, and it was really difficult to be with it. And somebody told me, sort of led me to believe that I nearly went for somatic experiencing, like a whole path of now going for a lot of sessions at £100 an hour on somatic. And then I had one session with a teacher, diamond teacher, and this identified from that. So then the shock layer was there, but there was all this other space, and I didn't need the somatic anything. And so when I reflect back, I think to myself, I think there's a lot of re-traumatizing I've done in therapy, going over the same being, and then you're dependent on the therapist, and then if that relationship doesn't go well, something can happen. And so I sort of feel it's not all it's cracked up to be. Yeah, in my experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, because of the dangers of not really, like, sort of being in it and then like feeding it somehow. Somebody used the word indulging. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I couldn't say, I mean, I appreciate you sharing your experience, and I have heard other people who also have, some people have found therapy has been very useful for them in some ways, some people less so, some people completely unhelpful. So, I think there is a wide range of experience. So it's hard to kind of say anything. I don't have anything blanket to say about therapy.
Yeah.
I really can't. Yeah. I don't know.
But what did strike me in our group,
yeah,
we had a wonderful inquiry, and it was far-ranging what we've done, going to monasteries, going on courses, doing dancing, doing shaking, doing, like learning communication skills, like so many empowerment things. So there's so many different things, all of us, a huge range, and some of them we've done the similar things and found them really useful. So it's like, I think there's a lot more than inquiry.
Yes.
I would broaden it. Like for me, I just go, there's a huge amount I've been attracted to and helped by that isn't inquiry, but not so much the therapy.
Yeah. Great too. Nice to hear. I'm glad you had a rich discussion.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody. So I think that brings us to time for this evening. Michael has posted in the chat, our next Dive In with Dom is going to be on the 13th of March, same Zoom link, so you're welcome to come along. Don't forget that you can view sort of past episodes on YouTube. We haven't much sort of encouraged engagement and all of that there, but please feel free to, sort of follow. We'll hear when there are new ones that get posted, and post comments and all of that sort of thing, or questions if you'd like to. I will be keeping an eye on it and trying to respond to things. So it's also a way you can share this and let other people know about it. And then for those who have done the course, or if you haven't done the course, there's an inquiry course you can check out. And if you have done it, or if you are one of my students, then the Tuesday evening Dive In live sessions are a sort of ongoing, most Tuesdays, inquiry masterclass. So it's another opportunity to engage. All right. Yes.
I'm new. What is the YouTube link?
Yes, Jay. Just look for @DiveIn, search for @DiveIn inquiry. So if you just search on, let me get it to everybody. I can't do that. Oh, everyone in meeting. There it is. Yeah. If you just go for that,
Thank you.
see it all there. Thanks for the question, Jay. Good night, everyone. Till next month. Wish you a rich journey.
Thank you, Dom.
Thank you.